The Philippines has been experiencing an economic boom in the last 3 years thanks to the continuous growth in OFW remittances and foreign investments in the country's BPO industry. As the demand of condominiums and houses rise with the economic boom the country has been experiencing, so has the number of people who have been duped into buying properties that are already owned by other people. What is double sale? What is the difference between sale of property to replacement buyers and double sale? What do you do if you have been a victim of double sale?
Good evening. I am Attorney Karen Jimeno and you are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will be discussing your rights on the issue of real estate, more specifically on the issue of double sale. What you need to know in processing documents for your real estate property and what you need to do when you have been a victim of a double sale transaction. Yan. Maraming cases na ganun.
Yes,
Especially
I think this
now.
is one of the most common questions I also get.
Sa real estate.
I have usually people asking me, paano pala gagawin namin? Kasi may binili kami and then they find out later on na nabenta na pala to someone else or may kasabay. So that's basically double sale when the same property is sold by the same seller to two buyers at the same time.
Yan, kasi our Article 1544 Civil Code that covers yung situation of double sale. No? It involves both movable objects, so yung usual things that you sell, and then also it covers real estate. There are different rules sa movable objects and sa real estate.
Definitely, here the most common case is really with real estate. Yung pagka mga lupa or even mga bahay, condominiums. So one thing that you have to know under our law is we have this principle called caveat emptor, or that's a Latin term for buyer beware. Ibig sabihin, when you're buying property, you have to look out for your own interests. So if it's property being sold to you, first, do an ocular inspection, look at the property itself. Tignan nyo kung may nakatira na because that's an indication na nabenta na yung property sa iba. And you won't be considered a buyer in good faith. And then, also, go to the Register of Deeds if this is registered property. Check the title. Check kung nakapangalan ba talaga sa nagbebenta sa inyo yung property na yon. Or kung may naka-annotate dyan na meron bang nabenta sa iba.
Right.
And then,
what makes it interesting kasi, partner, yung in some situations, there's fraud involved. No? So, hindi lang, we're not talking about, of course, the double sale part, that's a civil aspect part, no? And in which case tonight we're going to be addressing that issue and what are the remedies of those people who may be the second buyer normally. Normally the issue dyan yung second buyer, no? Kasi normally the first buyer protected siya. But as long as the sale had not been rescinded, the previous sale, no? But the reason why nagiging murky siya ng konti the issue is because there's fraud involved. And normally in situations, in fact, the case study that we have, there are criminal cases involved. But in this episode, we won't be tackling on that aspect, no, yung fraud and everything. That's a totally different topic altogether.
Basically, we'll be talking about how buyers can protect their interests. First, to avoid this situation na para hindi kayo mabentahan ng same property that's already been sold to someone else. And second, what can you do, especially if installments have been paid? Because sometimes you have two buyers, pareho naman nagbayad, pareho may installments, and it's really unfair for one of them to lose their installments or have to go through the hassle of going to court or contesting this. So again, important would be preventive. Avoid the situation first, but then if you find yourself in this situation, we'll also discuss in this episode how you can deal with this, what you should do, where you can file a complaint, and what your remedies are.
And against whom, no? Kasi minsan yung the property that you bought it from a friend or maybe a broker, no? Or minsan the property owner himself or herself, no? Or maybe it's a company. Do you go after that? Who will you go after, and what's the most practical way of approaching this problem? Right now, let's answer a question from one of our viewers. His name is Joseph, and it reads, 5 months ago, I was looking to buy a condo unit. When I finally found one that suited my needs and budget, I quickly took it. The seller wanted me to pay half of the selling price in order for me to move in. On the day that I moved into the condo, there was another person already living there. So we found out that we had the same seller. The owner of the unit didn't know what was going on because she knew that only the other guy was buying it. So we tried contacting the broker, but she cannot be reached. I plan on filing a case against her. And what steps should I take in order to do so? Ayan. So
Okay.
that's what I was mentioning earlier.
This is really a case of double sale. But
Yeah.
it looks like in this case, yung seller didn't really sell the property twice. It was the broker,
It was the broker,
who did
eh.
this.
Oo,
And
oo.
of course, one thing that we want to tell not only the person asking this question, but also our viewers, when you have a broker selling to you, you have to look for the written authority of that broker to sell that property. And unfortunately, in this case, another thing that works against our viewer or person asking this question is that when he tried to occupy the condo unit, there was already someone living there. And normally, that's an indication of at least a presumption na meron lack of good faith on your part when you bought that property. Because as a subsequent buyer, you should have checked the property first. It's one of the...
Medyo yung good faith ba would be in question.
Oo,
eh?
kasi-
You never checked it.
Yeah,
no?
sasabihin nila, ano yung standard kasi ng good faith is what an ordinary person would do under circumstances, under ordinary circumstances. And if you're buying property, one thing you're expected to do is to check the property and see if, of course, if there's someone occupying it, then there is a presumption that you know that someone already owned that
Yeah.
property.
And in all likelihood, kung naka-register na sa kanya, it's already registered in his name, meaning the first buyer, then obviously the presumption is that he has the right, and unfortunately you, the second buyer, you don't have the
Yes.
right. But you can, of course, file a case against the broker.
Yes,
Yeah, so-
you mentioned that you were required to pay half of the purchase price in order to occupy the property. So you can get back the installments or the half of the purchase price that you paid, and you can also file a case for damages against this broker. Yes.
Yeah.
And
All right.
of course, let's take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders.
The development of the St. Monique Valaisas Homeowners Association and a subdivision, nag-start ito ng early 1990s, and then na karoon ng Homeowners Association in 1999. All along, maganda ang naging takbo ng association, ang subdivision, until such time na lumabas nga yung problema sa Siviera, na alam namin na pag-aari rin ni Delphine Lee. Now, Philmal is also owned by Delphine Lee. By the way, Philmal is a Filipino-Malaysian venture subdivision. Nagtaka kami nung pumutok yung Siviera case, and then all along ang subdivision namin, St. Monique Valaisas, may have the same problem, which I think came first before Siviera. Pero ang napansin nga namin noon, every now and then na may mga nagko-complain regarding double sale, regarding non-issuance of titles despite full payments. Ang sinasabi sa amin ng mga previous administration, inaasikaso ni Mr. Delphine Lee lahat. So we should not worry. They came to know that itong mga properties were already with some banks, commercial banks, PNB, RCBC, and so forth. And that it was confirmed by no less than the Register of Deeds na nakalevy doon sa mga titles nila, yung mga bangkong yon, yung encumbered na ng bangko. Until now, we are finding ways to arrest the question that hounds us, yung kung saan pupunta, ano na ang magiging estado, lalo na may mga titulo, how will they get the title na fully paid naman na sila. So these are the things we should bring to the authorities, to the government, and we are asking the government to help us. So that's precisely our predicament, and that's our prayer.
You are still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. We are now joined by Dean Ed Vincent Albano, a professor and bar reviewer in 4 law schools, including University of the Philippines and San Beda. He is also an author of law books on persons and family relations and torts and damages. Welcome, Dean Albano.
Thank you very much, Karen, for the invitation.
Good evening po. And we also have with us Attorney Janice Coloma, legal counsel for the complainants and buyers of Severa project of Globe Asiatic, and she will be sharing with us the case of these complainants. Welcome, Attorney Coloma.
Thank you for your invitation.
Yes.
So I guess now we're discussing first, you're representing the buyers. Are they're, you said they're the kind of the replacement buyers or the subsequent buyers of these properties of Globe Asiatic. And I think one thing we should discuss here first, Dean Albano, is there a case of a double sale here?
Well, it depends. If the contract with the first buyers was rescinded by way of a notice of cancellation or by way of a demand for rescission by notarial act, when there was failure to pay the amortizations, then there would be no double sale.
Yeah. But in this case, Attorney Coloma, you mentioned that your clients, yung mga subsequent buyers, the first buyers though only received a notice of cancellation, right?
Yes. Well, based on the documents presented by Globe Asiatic, well, so far we only saw a notice of cancellation. But for other requirements, they haven't presented it. But they do claim that there was already a valid rescission of the first contracts. And then the contract for the replacement buyers are supposed to be accepted by Pag-ibig or should be valid. And
yeah, so now Pag-ibig is not accepting their loans because Pag-ibig is saying that the first contracts were valid.
Yes, and right? Not yet rescinded.
Not yet rescinded.
So Attorney Coloma, currently, the clients you're representing, they're not able to occupy these properties that they supposedly bought from Globe Asiatic.
Some of them are actually occupying the properties now because the first buyers were not contesting.
That so they stopped paying.
Or that there was no valid cancellation. They did not raise any protest.
The first buyers.
Yes, the first buyers. So the replacement buyers, when they were given the authority by Globe Asiatic to occupy the premises, they were able to go there and claim the property.
The only problem now is that they can't get their title.
Yes.
So that's what they want to do. No?
And also the payment of the loans or the amortization, Pag-ibig is not accepting via payment.
Because Pag-ibig recognizes the first set of buyers but not the next set of buyers. So Dean, what's your take on this? First, can you run us through kung ano ba talaga yung tamang procedure for canceling contracts with first buyers?
Yes, if there is default or failure on the part of the buyers to pay the monthly amortizations, the seller must have to send a notice of cancellation or a demand for rescission by notarial act.
Notarial act meaning notarized.
Notarized demand for rescission. Then after 30 days from receipt of either of the two documents, then the contract can be the contract may be cancelled already after the lapse of 30 days.
What happens to the installment payments? Because the first buyers here have already paid Globe Asiatic some installments.
Yes, if there is already payment for at least 2 years, then the buyers are entitled to a refund to the extent of 50% of the cash surrender value of the total payments. Or if the payments would exceed 5 years, then there would be an additional 5% per year of payment. But the refund should not exceed 90% of the total payments.
Now, Attorney Janice, in the case of Globe Asiatic, Were there evidences or presented that there was such a return, or was it just purely the notice of cancellation?
Based on what I've seen, just purely the notice of cancellation.
Oh,
So I really don't know if there were a return
Returns,
of the...
if they went through the
yes.
proper procedure, no?
This is, I think, a very important legal point here. Assuming hindi tama yung pag-unilaterally cancel ng Globe Asiatic with the first buyers, then we should discuss what happens to the second buyers, because that would be clearly a double sale. And in this case, Dean Albano, maybe you can explain to us what would be the status of the sale to the second buyers.
Well, if there is really no compliance with the requirements of the law, I'm referring to the Maceda law. Because there must first be a notice of cancellation or demand for rescission by notarial act, coupled with the refund of
The
the
installment payment.
installment
Yes.
payments, 50% of the installment payments in case the payment is at least 2
2
years.
years.
Or if ever it goes beyond 5 years, up to 90%.
So
The law uses the word N. So, if there is receipt of the demand for rescission by notarial act or notice of cancellation, that's not enough.
Meaning
it
the
has to be.
status, the second buyers would be, yung sale to them would be void. Is that
That would be a case of double sale.
Yeah, let's talk about yung rules pag double sale. If there's double sale of registered property,
I believe in case of double sale under the Civil Code, the first person who registers the property under his name has a better right. In the Globe Asiatic cases, all the titles are still registered under Globe Asiatic.
okay.
So it's
Okay.
not yet with any of the buyers.
Right.
If there is no registration under the name, the first person who has possession of the
Yeah.
property.
Now, in this case, your clients are
Yes,
in
the
possession,
replacement buyers have possession. So I think it would be the replacement buyers who have a better right, who have better right over the property.
Okay. But here, I think the problem is you have a third party, yung
Yes.
Pag-ibig, for instance, where they're supposed to get financing to pay for
funding,
the properties they bought from Globe Asiatic. So what is the remedy for second buyers or subsequent buyers, for instance, whose rights are unrecognized? How can they claim the property?
Well, right now, we already filed several cases.
Yeah.
One, we intervened with the case between Globe Asiatic and Pag-ibig, and then we filed separate cases in Pampanga for declaratory relief, so that they would, we're asking the courts to determine what are the rights of the buyers pending the litigation between the two parties. However, of course, cases would take a long time, but
Right.
we're still hoping that notwithstanding the dispute between the parties, the courts would recognize that the replacement buyers have rights.
Yeah.
And what case should they file? I mean,
Yeah.
especially for those who
Minimum.
haven't filed anything yet. Now, hindi rin represent ni Attorney
They can even
Coloma.
file petitions for consignation.
Consignation.
For the benefit of our televiewers, what exactly happens in consignation?
Well, in consignation, all that you have to do is to file the petition, and then you have to deposit the amount that is due in court. And then there would be notice to the Globe Asiatic, and that would satisfy the obligation to prevent delay.
But to make sure that they claim the property, what complaint can they file, and which court should they go to?
Well, first of all, it should be the court that has jurisdiction is the what's that?
HLURB,
HLURB.
Housing and
HLURB.
Land Use Regulatory
Yeah,
Board.
Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board.
So that's
That,
the first.
that
The
should
first.
be the
To
first.
complain against
Yes.
Globe Asiatic for
Yes.
selling the same properties twice.
will eventually happen to Globe Asiatic is just that they'll just be penalized, right?
Well, that is one of the effects, but that
Yeah.
will also save the buyers.
Okay.
Because if there is a deposit of the amount with the proper government authority, then the obligation is considered as already satisfied or extinguished. That would save them from being in delay in the performance of their obligation to pay.
I think one of the benefits of going to the HLURB first is that you do not have to be represented by a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right? Last question, Dean Albano. What can they do against a third party, not the seller? Obviously, the seller here is at fault for selling to two parties na hindi pa validly or properly rescinded yung first one. But how can these buyers, yung second buyers, force Pag-ibig, for instance, to accept their payments, to recognize them as valid buyers?
That's why I said it should be by way of a petition for consignation.
Petition
and the
for
respondent
consignation.
there is Pag-ibig.
Okay.
I hope
Resolution
settlement
is
is also possible.
Yes,
We're
that's
trying,
always,
we're trying.
oo,
You're
that's
trying to,
always also an available avenue.
So for Pag-ibig, we're trying to talk to them so we could settle, and they said maybe you could submit us proposals for settlement. So I'm hoping it would work out for the benefit of the buyers.
Yeah, and I hope the viewers out there, be careful when you buy properties. Check first if there's a previous sale, and make sure that if there is a previous sale, that it was validly canceled, so you don't end up being a victim of double sale. And thank you, Dean Albano and Attorney Coloma, for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you so much for joining us.
It's a
Thank you very
pleasure
much also for the
to be
invitation.
here.
Thank you. Let's take another short break. Legal Help Desk will be back after these reminders. You are still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. Okay, so first let's review what we have learned so far regarding double selling.
Yeah.
And here we have the case of Globe Asiatic. I know there are other controversies involved
Right.
here, but yung interesting thing here is actually the second buyers, the subsequent buyers, were lucky that the first buyers were not contesting na sila yung tamang may-ari.
Yeah, and
no?
when you said murky, that's part of the controversy kasi may
Yeah.
mga question nga on the personalities
Yeah, I
of,
think
of
they
the
were
first buyers.
ghost buyers,
Yeah, yung sinasabi
right?
nga nila, ghost buyers. Of course, that's not our topic
Yeah.
regarding ghost buyers, and there was an issue involving that. But
Parang dummy lang yung first buyers
Correct.
in order to get money from Pag-ibig to go
Yes.
through Globe Asiatic.
so
no?
the challenge here is to convince Pag-ibig that,
That
the first sale
Yeah.
is not valid, and therefore allow
Yeah.
these second buyers to pay their amortization.
Yeah.
Yun yung main issue doon.
But the normal problems, yung talagang double sale that I think most of Filipinos experience is that meron talagang first buyer na nauna or at least sabay talagang binenta to
Yeah.
two people with the same property and the same seller.
Yes.
And I think the important points that we learned here today is that first, if it's registered property, what do we mean by registered? Pumunta po kayo sa Register of Deeds where the property is situated. If it's a property in Quezon City, go to the Register of Deeds in Quezon City and ask for the title. Tignan niyo po
Yeah,
doon kung
importante.
kanino nakapangalan yung property. If it's in the name of the person selling it to you or the developer selling it to you, then at least you can say na sila talaga yung owner when you bought the property. Because if there has been a subsequent sale, then it should be registered in the
Naka-annotate.
name of that second buyer. And that's according to our law. If there's a case of a double sale, it's really the first buyer who registers the property in their name who would have a better right. Kahit na, so look out, even if you're the first buyer, kahit fully paid ka pa, and the second buyer has only paid one installment, kung nauna naman yung second buyer na mag-register ng property, then matatalo rin kayo.
yeah.
So you really have to be careful, and this is what you call
Yeah.
caveat emptor,
Yeah,
no?
that's right.
Buyer
beware.
beware.
Yeah, kaya the relevant provision of the Civil Code at Article 1544, no? Yeah, tama yung sinabi ni Attorney Karen, yung unang nag-register, siya yung magkakaroon ng right. But let's say there's no registration for both parties, the rule there is first possession. The first one who takes possession, but in good faith.
Yes.
Okay, so importante yun. So the one who takes possession. Now, kung no one took possession and no one registered, the one who can show the oldest title.
Oldest side, meaning,
Yeah.
kunwari may contract of sale ho kayo, kung sino yung mas naunang contract of sale, yun yung mananalo. But also, I'd like to add, yung dun naman sa registration, even if you register first, it has to be in good faith. If you register pero nalaman nyo na from a friend or just by knowledge, nalaman nyo na nabenta na pala yung property na yun to someone else before you, then under the law, even if you registered the sale first, you would not be considered a buyer in good faith, meaning you won't
Alam mo
win
na.
the case of double sale pa rin. And for sellers naman, you can go after the sellers who sold the same property twice by claiming damages.
Also, it's important to point out, when you're buying through a broker, all right, you have to make sure that your broker is duly licensed, no? Licensed by the HLURB, at saka not only the broker himself, but the company. And not only the company, but also the project.
Yes.
Dapat naka-registered sila, duly licensed, no? And registered yung project. Otherwise, put a question mark on that. So be careful with the brokers you're dealing with. No?
Yeah.
Of course, it's different. It's different if you're talking to the property owner mismo. That's easier to check, right?
Yeah. And also, if you're dealing with, yung mga informal arrangements, usong-uso rin to dito sa Pilipinas, na pinapabenta sa akin ng kapatid ko, ganyan. You have to look for a written authorization from the owner of the property, authorizing that person, whoever it is, kung kapatid man niya yan, or kaibigan, authorizing them to sell the property on their behalf, because our law requires that their authority should be in writing.
Right. It's a real since real property yan, dapat notarized yan para you can, you're right, you can claim it against the whole world. Yan, importante dyan, no? So yeah, we learned a lot today.
Yes.
And I hope our televiewers learned a lot as well, no?
Yeah, I always get these questions nalalaman na lang nila later on, yung nabili pa lang nila ng property. Iba na yung may nauna na, o iba na may-ari. And of course, kung bibili kayo, always do an ocular inspection, meaning puntahan niyo yung actual property, kasi yung iba, nalalaman na lang nila later on na may nakatira pala doon ever since, prior to the execution of the deed of sale. And under our law, that's what they say na, kaya nga caveat emptor, buyer beware. That's your lookout na the law expects you to look after your rights. You have to check the property before you buy it.
Hindi lang of course really, we're talking about real property here, but also when you're buying anything, no, mga movable objects and anything that you're buying, whether it's a car, you have to be very careful in checking out the rights of the seller. All right, so that's all the time we have for tonight. We would like to thank our guests for coming and sharing with us some important points when dealing with real estate properties, brokers, and agents. I'm Rodney Pumuseno.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. I am Karen Jimeno. Join us again next time for another round of discussion on your legal rights. Good night.